Hello, Scobies. Queen Bee here to talk to you today. I did a recording with Mike Rinder just before Easter, and this was with regards to if a Scientologist can call themselves a Christian. The answer is definitely no, and we explain why. In Scientology's own doctrine, why that's an impossibility, even though there are many people who say, oh, you can be a Scientologist and be any other religion. You can be a Christian. It's just not true. It's a lie, trying to make themselves seem mainstream, normal, relating with, generally accepted mainstream religions. Anyway, it's another culty lie, and so it's being exposed in this video that I did with Mike over on his channel, and I want it to come over onto my channel so it's available to all of you. So I hope you find it informative. Enjoy.
Waiting for a man who says he's going to blow the lid off the secrets of the religion of the stars, to tell the story of the dark side of the Church of Scientology.
Hey everyone, it's Mike and Amy back again for another
Hello.
YouTube. Hi, Amy.
Hello, I love that intro.
Yeah, that's my old buddy, John Sweeney.
Yes.
That's such a funny story, our relationship. Anyway, we're not going to get into that because we're going to focus on what I have called the Easter special. It seems very appropriate to take a little moment now to talk about Scientology and Christianity on the eve of Easter. And you bring an interesting perspective to this. Certainly, there is a lot of propaganda that Scientology pumps out about how you can be a Christian and a Scientologist too, or you can be a Scientologist and a Christian too. And we are fully in agreement with the aims of Christianity. And we hold Easter egg hunts and we celebrate all the things about Christ. And we even have a cross, which we'll get to a little later. Let's just start, Amy, with you giving a little description about, or a little explanation for anybody that doesn't know, and I'm not sure that there are too many people that don't, but in any event, what is the significance of Easter to Christians?
Okay, so what I did is there's a whole bunch you could talk about that, so I just got a very concise statement, which I'll just read here. So to Christians, Easter commemorates the resurrection of Jesus Christ, fulfilling the biblical prophecy of a Messiah who would rise from the dead and give eternal life to those who believe in him, as per John 3:16, which says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." That's a simplicity. It's a celebration.
Well, yeah. And, I guess to us heathens that were not even raised a Christian, I know when I was growing up in Australia, Easter was like a really seriously big deal. I mean, it was like Good Friday was absolutely a national holiday, not like here in the US. It apparently isn't. And it was a big, big, big deal, because this is really the sort of, the birth of Christ is Christmas, and everybody knows what that is and the celebration of it. But that's not the most significant event in the Christian world. The resurrection of Jesus is the really significant thing, because that has much, I mean, I guess it was a virgin birth, so that's pretty significant. But in any event, it's a very important holiday, and it drives me a little crazy when I keep seeing Scientology going, "Oh, we're having an Easter egg hunt. We're celebrating Easter. Bring your kids, bring the family, so that the Regis can get a hold of you and take some of your money."
That's why. Dress up as bunnies. Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. But this, they sort of take all of these religious holidays, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah for the Jews and other holidays, and kind of what's the right word for that? It's not preempt. It's like they take them over as if it's something important for them too, and they're going to celebrate this with everybody else who's a Christian or a Jew or whatever.
Desperately trying to be classified as a religion, even though they're really a cult. And so
Right.
they try to associate, with their celebrating Easter. I'm a Christian too, and different things that they do, the Sunday services, the cross, all this kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah. It's funny, I know that you now have become friends with Willie Rice, the pastor of Calvary Baptist. And some years ago, he undertook a project to gather together information about Scientology and compare it to Christian beliefs and statements in the Bible. And he put it to this document that was like a white paper, and invited Christian ministers and pastors from all over the Tampa Bay area to come to Calvary Baptist to be briefed about this.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Aaron and I went and spoke at that meeting.
Oh, wow.
And the white paper that Willie and his team put together was really impressive. In fact, I'd like to see if I can get my hands on that. I might give Willie a call and see if that still exists, because I think that bringing this up now may generate some interest in it, and perhaps people might be wanting to get a hold of that. So I'm going to see if I can get it.
Yes, I'd love to see that too. I know he did a podcast with you and Leah, which was also amazing.
Yeah, and he was on the Aftermath too.
I didn't see him on the up.
Oh, yeah, we surprised him. We went into Calvary Baptist and walked in with cameras, and he was doing a briefing to I don't even know who it was. It wasn't in the main auditorium, it was somewhere else. And he was like, "Oh, look who's here." And we walked up the front with cameras rolling and talked to him and some of the people there. I've been to Calvary Baptist many times. I consider Willie and his wife to be good friends, and I have to say that the community of people there are what makes me feel good about religion. It is the people and their kindness and their genuine nature and their willingness to help. And a lot of people give me a lot of shit saying, "Oh yeah, well, you're just you're a wild ass liberal and you're always anti-conservative and Republicans and blah blah blah." I actually am not, and I take pains to try and lay out the facts of what but
I
the
hate
people
labels.
Calvary Baptist are generally pretty Republican, conservative, very, very Christian, and I love them. And I would be with them and choose to be with them and attend their get-togethers and associate with them any day of the week. So it's just that's sort of an off the side.
I totally know what you mean.
Because I got a lot of shit about talking about conservative judges and the appointment of conservative judges and how they have been the ones who have consistently ruled in favor of Scientology, quote, religious arbitration. And it's the liberally appointed judges who have dissented and said no. And in the case in California, actually overturned the decision. So that's my point. I'm not an anti-conservative. There's a lot of conservative views that I hold to.
And I just want to say, I could feel very awkward and unaccepted and whatever. And you know, you have been so accepting of me. I mean, I went through a transformation that I didn't understand, and I know it's not like what everybody else thinks or what everybody else goes through or whatever, but you are so loving and caring and accepting that, you know, and same with, you know, Claire and Mark and so and different other friends that I have too. It's just amazing, you and Christy. And our friendship is just unbreakable. So
Yeah, it
you can
is.
be this way and I could be that way or whatever, but we still we're still charging forward to expose the cult of Scientology and also to live our best life.
Right. And we enjoy each other's living our best lives.
Yeah.
I am happy as can be that you find something that brings you comfort and pleasure
Yeah.
and whatever. So I know you feel the same way about me.
That's for
We'll
sure.
leave it at that because we've gotten off the subject like I usually do. You know,
But I
I
love it.
ramble.
I love it. I'm glad we got to, yes.
Okay, another thing that I wanted to bring up, Amy, is this idea that Scientologists constantly say, you know, you can be a Scientologist and a Jew, you can be a Scientologist and a Christian, you can be, and this is a sort of a grooved in propaganda line that they use, and
Lie.
it's a lie. Absolutely.
A line and a lie.
A line and a lie. And I have this tweet here that's just one example, and this is from a very prominent Scientologist, Erica Christensen. Erica
Mhm.
Christensen is, as you probably know, an actress, and she was born and raised a Scientologist. And she put out this tweet, and it's in response to something. I do, and Jewish Scientologists celebrate Hanukkah. There are Baptist to Buddhist to Muslim Scientologists. This is complete bullshit.
Mhm.
It is, they may pretend that they are participating somehow, as, you know, they go to a Seder for their Jewish family, or they, you know, visit their family on Christmas Day and,
Mhm.
you know, say grace because their parents say grace at the table or something, you know, and that's about the extent of their participation in
Yeah.
those other religions, because it is not acceptable for a Scientologist to be anything other than a Scientologist. Everything else is considered to be bad. Squirrel, in fact. It's
High crime. High
other
crime.
practices. It's a high crime. And we're going to run through some of the things that Hubbard has to say about Christianity and other religions, because despite what Scientology may say in their propaganda pieces, or you see an Erica Christensen say on Twitter or whatever, the actual beliefs and practices of Scientology are dictated by L. Ron Hubbard 100%. There is no deviating from the Hubbard mantra, not in any way, shape, or form in Scientology. And in fact, the most significant writing of L. Ron Hubbard on the subject of Scientology is called Keeping Scientology Working. And there are actually a couple of policies that he wrote that are on the subject of the importance of keeping Scientology pure. And I'm going to read a couple of quotes that I pulled out from those policy letters. These are the words of L. Ron Hubbard, and these are the words to be followed by every single Scientologist on planet Earth. Scientology is a workable system. In 50,000 years of history on this planet alone, man never evolved a workable system. 50,000 years, that's a lot longer than 2,000 years ago and the birth of Christ. It is doubtful if, in foreseeable history, he will ever evolve another. You know, Hubbard wasn't a guy that sort of bashfully said, you know, well, I might have found something. he was so brazen about his abilities and skills and whatever it is that he discovered. In any way, man is caught in a huge and complex labyrinth. To get out of it requires that he follow the closely taped path of Scientology. Scientology will take him out of the labyrinth, but only if he follows the exact markings in the tunnels. It has taken me a third of a century in this lifetime to tape this route out. It has been proven that efforts by man to find different routes came to nothing. It is also a clear fact that the route called Scientology does lead out of the labyrinth. Scientology is the only workable system man has. It has already taken people toward higher IQ, better lives, and all that. No other system has. So realize that it has no competitor. This is Hubbard. This is his view of every other philosophy and every other religion on earth. They are all a waste of time. Now, you can argue whether they are or they aren't. And, atheists will say, well, he's right. All other religions, but no, he is saying Scientology is the one and everything else doesn't work. Man hasn't come up with any solution, and neither has God, and neither has Jesus, and neither did Buddha, and neither did Muhammad, and neither did anybody else. It's only me. And
Right.
That is what Scientologists truly believe.
Mm-hmm. It's the only workable technology, and L. Ron Hubbard is source.
Yeah. And that to a Scientologist, source means he is
Everything.
the only person that can emanate knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
His is the only knowledge that is actually valuable and important.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter what a Scientologist says or pretends or tries to convince people of. That is the bottom line for every Scientologist. You can't be a Scientologist unless you believe that wholeheartedly and ascribe to that way of living 100%. That's all
even
there is.
Technical degrades and along with keeping Scientology working, like any alteration or any time that something was accepted from someone else, like a little tidbit of information or whatever was accepted by somebody, they inevitably found out that it was wrong and destructive, and we had to go back to only L. Ron Hubbard. So it's definitely like you can't even take a sentence from somebody else.
Exactly. That's exactly right. In fact, there are a few other little things that I'm going to pull out here. One of which is called the Auditor's Code. And this is the code that every counselor, which is what an auditor is, a Scientology counselor, must subscribe to and must, it's a whole list of them. I've just pulled one piece that is relevant. And what he says is, I promise not to mix the processes of Scientology with other practices, except when the pre-clear is physically ill and only medical means will serve. Now, that's sort of doesn't sound that dramatic, but understand that mixing practices is, as Amy just mentioned, a crime in Scientology. And mixing practices means anything other than Scientology. Yoga is considered to be mixing practices. Praying is considered to be mixing practices.
Absolutely.
Doing any, if you went and took communion, it would be a mixing of practices.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the Bible as a way of resolving a problem or comforting oneself, that would be considered mixing practices.
It's not even conceivable as a Scientologist.
I know. and I right now have read you some stuff from the publicly available materials of Scientology. Where this gets really interesting is when you get to Hubbard's wacky operating Thetan levels. Because in the operating Thetan levels, he starts talking about the source of this idea about Christianity and Jesus and being crucified and all of this sort of stuff. And this is not something that is mere speculation. It's in his damn handwriting. Like,
Yeah.
he wrote this stuff. He wrote this stuff in his own very identifiable hand. And I'm going to have to explain some of this to you so you understand the significance, because, I'm not going to give you the whole of the OT3 materials. I'm just going to show you some of it, and Amy and I can explain to you what this means. OT3 is the story that Hubbard invented of the great cataclysm that happened on planet Earth 75 million years ago, when all of these people were flown in on DC-8 spaceships and dropped in volcanoes and blown up with hydrogen bombs and implanted. And what implanting means in Scientology, it's a term that Hubbard used for usually electronic devices and movies and pictures, putting ideas into your mind that stick there and keep you from being your true self for eternity until they are undone by the brilliant research of L. Ron Hubbard.
It's like a tooth implant, but in your brain.
That's a good way of putting it, Amy. But to Scientologists, implants are very, very serious.
Oh, big time.
This is like, it's not, I know it seems laughable, but to Scientologists, this stuff is not laughable at all. This is like the most serious business there is. So here is what Hubbard says in one of the pages of OT3. It's actually two. It goes over to the next page. Okay, so he's talking about these various pictures and 36 days of picture implants, which give a vast array of materials and 3 explanations for the bombing being the hydrogen bombs. 10, transport to Hawaii or Las Palmas for packaging up into clusters. Clusters, just a group of these, what he called body thetans, all jammed together. The pictures contain God, the devil, angels, space opera, theaters, helicopters, a constant spinning, a spinning dancer, trains, and various scenes like modern England. You name it, it's in this implant we call in its entirety R6. Now, there's a lot of gobbledygook terminology in there, but if we just go back and say an implant is an idea that is put in your mind by these pictures, by these evil people who are trying to control you, and the pictures contain God, the devil, angels, and a whole bunch of other stuff, trains and blah, blah, blah. Okay. We then go to a lecture that Hubbard gave about OT3. And he delivered this lecture, and I'm just going to show you. Obviously, I can't, it's not in his handwriting because it's in his talking. And you can actually find this lecture. It's on YouTube or on the internet somewhere. But this is an excerpt from it. And what he says is, and this is talking about the implants. Anyway, every man is then shown to have been crucified. So don't think that it's an accident that this crucifixion, they found out that this applied. Somebody somewhere on this planet back about 600 BC found some piece of R6. And I don't know how they found it either, by watching Mad Men or something. But since that time, they have used it, and it became what is known as Christianity. The man on the cross, there was no Christ, but the man on the cross is shown as every man. So, of course, each person seeing a crucified man has an immediate feeling of sympathy for this man. Therefore, you get many PCs, pre-clears, Scientologists, who say they are Christ. Now, there are two reasons for that. One is the Roman Empire was prone to crucify people, so a person can have been crucified. But in R6, he is shown as crucified. Now, that may not be entirely clear, because Hubbard has a way of talking that just sort of goes around in circles. But what he is saying here is that part of this implant that occurred 75 million years ago was that every person was implanted with the idea that they have been crucified. They personally have been hung on a cross. And that 600 years before Christ, about 600 years BC, someone suddenly realized that this idea of being crucified was a way of controlling people. And that's how Christianity came about. That is Hubbard's idea of Christianity.
Yeah, and he's really clear. There was no Christ.
There was no Christ, and so, it is an implant.
So like, you can be a Christian and believe. I mean, oh, jeez, man.
I know we're laughing about it, but this is stupendously hypocritical for Scientologists to be out there saying, "Oh yes, we can all, you know, hold hands together and agree with the stories of Jesus, and we can all be Christians and Scientologists too." The fuck you can. You get to OT3 and you're like, that was, I now believe that the idea of Christ is an implant put there by evil psychiatrists trying to control the population of Earth. And that's what Scientologists actually think about Christianity, or at least those who've gotten through OT3. It's in the Class 8 course.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It was a Class 8 lecture. I think it's called Assists. I think it's Class 8 lecture number 10, and I think it's called Assists. But it is certainly available. And you can hear, I mean, there are some quotes from Hubbard that are in Going Clear. I think that they took some of the audio and used it over the sequences where they were talking about OT3. And I'm going to find the link to this particular lecture and see if I can include it in the description of this video.
Oh, that'd be great.
So that people can listen to it.
It doesn't take a brain surgeon, though. The first policy you're made to read makes it very clear that there isn't anything else besides Scientology. And if you try to, you're supposed to hammer out of existence anything that's different, you're supposed to, you know, so it's just
absolutely. You're absolutely right, Amy. You know, like I said, you can go to the publicly available materials and it's very clear. It's just that when you go to the OT materials, he says there was no Christ and Christianity was invented from an implant.
Yes.
I mean,
I read those materials when I was, you know, I didn't know the first thing about Jesus or, you know, God or anything like that in 30 years of being in Scientology. I didn't know the first thing about it other than what I read on the OT3 materials. That's it.
Oh my God.
That's pretty sad.
That is pretty sad.
I know.
But then again, there is this other aspect, like people always bring up, what about this? Why does Scientology have a cross? And it's just another, as you mentioned earlier, you know, the Sunday service and the, you know, wearing of dog collars and that sort of stuff is all to create the impression that Scientology is a religion just like the mainstream religions.
We laughed about it. We laughed about somebody wearing one of those things,
I know.
or having to have a Sunday service, and blah blah blah, in order to be tax exempt status. That was one of the reasons.
I know. And this cross is really interesting because Hubbard and Scientology now say, well, the cross predates Christianity. It was a symbol that's been used for many, many thousands of years.
Oh,
yeah, well, that may be true, and it doesn't matter if it is or isn't true. The reason for having a cross in Scientology is to look like other churches. And they claim, oh yeah, but our cross is different because we have an 8-pointed cross.
Mm-hmm.
And the 8 points stand for the 8 dynamics. And as Amy and I have laughed about a number of times, here is what the Scientology cross would actually look like if it represented the 8 dynamics.
There it is.
Because all the dynamics are equal. There is not one dynamic that is more significant than the other. I don't
You're
know
welcome,
which one.
Scientology. You're welcome. We provided this for you.
We got you a ninja star to represent Scientology for real, because you don't really have a cross. Like, I wonder if the big long one down the bottom is supposed to be the first dynamic. Like, I wonder which dynamic gets the longest bit. I wonder which 4 get the short bits.
The third dynamic gets the long one, right?
Right.
Everything has to be for the group.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, it's just really a straight line. It's just the third dynamic. Yes. That's an inside joke. We're not even going to get into explaining that. Okay. But then there is one final thing that I want to bring up. And that is the requirement for being a religious exempt organization in the US there's a bunch of criteria that the IRS uses. And one of them is that, you believe that your way of doing things is the only way of doing things. In other words, you can't be just sort of a generic everybody, everything. You gotta have your own ideas, your own sort of system, your own congregation, your own buildings. You can't just be the spaghetti monsters. That's not really a religion, according to the IRS. But this came up with the IRS when Scientology was seeking to gain exemption. And they asked a question that had to be responded to. And here is how Scientology responded to that question by the IRS. And this is the official statement made to the United States government under penalty of perjury about what Scientologists believe and how Scientologists treats this. Although there is no policy or scriptural mandate expressly requiring Scientologists to renounce other religious beliefs or membership in other churches, as a practical matter, Scientologists are expected to and do become fully devoted to Scientology to the exclusion of other faiths. As Scientologists, they are required to look only to Scientology scriptures for the answers to the fundamental questions of their existence and to seek enlightenment only from Scientology. Thus, a Scientologist who grew up in the Jewish faith, who continues formal membership in his synagogue and attends services with his family, violates no Scientology or policy or tenet. On the other hand, such a person is not permitted to mix the practice of his former faith into his practice and understanding of Scientology so as to alter Orthodox Scientology in any way. Now, this is somewhat mealy-mouthed, but that last section says, well, you can do that, but then you're not a Scientologist because
Exactly.
you're mixing practices and you're not
Yep.
allowed to do that.
And that's a high crime, and you could
And
be
that's
declared a suppressive person.
exactly. So the final word on whether Scientology is or isn't a compatible with Christianity or Judaism or any other of the mainline religions is what they said to the IRS. Because are they going to go back on that now and say, well, not really, that's not really how we do things? That is how they do things. They had to be honest and do that because they know that something like that could always be, they could be caught out on it. And they're not so worried about people being, the PR people being caught out. They're worried about the statement to the IRS, which could be affecting their tax exemption. So that really is the truth. And
that's the truth. And that's what they should promote. And the other thing
exactly.
is, like they always say, when you learn as a Scientologist what to say when people say, well, what is Scientology? You always start with, it's a non-denominational religion. It's just a lie. So you start with a lie. The first 3 words out of your mouth.
Yes, absolutely. So do you have anything else to add to this, Amy, before we take some questions?
Yeah. What I wanted to do was just paint a little bit of a different picture of, on the other hand, a couple quotes from scripture, which will show you the difference between Scientology and Christianity. So here's one. This is from the Bible. It's from the book of John. It says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Also from Romans is, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Okay, so we're cleansed and there's no condemnation. In Scientology, they condemn you for every transgression that you do. There's all kinds of condemnation. They have a list of 2 gruesomes of like overboardings and rehabilitation project force and lower conditions. And, the list goes on for hours and days of what they do. And I'll just give you one example. When I was 16 years old, my first confessional, I had had sex with my first husband before we got married. I was 16. He was 26.
Oh my God.
I know. So I was in a confessional with somebody. I remember his last name was Zimmerman. And it was an adult male, and I was a 13-year-old girl, and I was pretty scared. I was shaking, I remember. And I didn't want to confess, but I did. And at the end of that confession, after he got every single detail that I could ever, oh my God. Anyway, he said, for everything that you've truthfully told me, you're forgiven by Scientologists. And I thought, wow, what a weight off my shoulders. How cool is this, right? So I walk out of the session. There's 2 security guards waiting for me, and they escort me to the rehabilitation project force, where I spent the next 8 months running everywhere I went, wearing rags. Okay, so that's how much they forgive you. And then let's see, here's another one. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. That's Ephesians 4. Verse number 32. So again, Scientology is make the penalties for noncompliance too gruesome to be faced and enforce them. And we'd rather have you dead than incapable. And then the next one is, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And that's from Matthew. Scientology attacks to utterly destroy their enemies.
Oh yeah. And Hubbard's famous quote, anybody that attacks Scientology, I always even the score. I never forget.
Exactly. Yeah. And then just finally, it's a great quote, also in Matthew 7. It says, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. So what are the fruits of Scientology? Broken families, empty bank accounts, and ignorant slaves.
There you go, Amy.
Yeah, that's the fruits of Scientology. What is the fruits of Scientology? Just like shells of people who've like given up their lives and just they're destroyed. Anyway,
I
so
hear
that's
you.
the fruit of Scientology, and it tells you in they might say on the outside they're very, benign and benevolent, but inward they're ravenous wolves deceiving people,
Taking their money.
taking their money and breaking their families apart.
Yep. Okay, let's hit some comments and questions. This first one is something I just wanted to say hi, Rochelle. This is someone that I have known for many, many, many years. Nice to hear from you, Rochelle. Thanks for being here and commenting.
Hi, Rochelle.
Okay, and here's another one. Mark Bunker is vice mayor.
Hooray.
Yes, congratulations, Mark Bunker.
Yeah.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Mm-hmm.
All righty, Marcus. What was the best brawl you two ever saw in Scientology?
Best.
Wow. Best brawl? I'm not sure that
How
any
about
of them were
worst?
best. Worst? Gosh. I think that probably the worst I ever saw was this melee that happened in the hole, but that involved a whole bunch of people. And I think that Tom DeVox set it off when Tom DeVox said something about Miscavige being a lunatic. And
did he say that?
Yes, he did. Tom got thrown out of the hole. He was not allowed to be in the hole. He had to be sent to the old Gilman house under guard because he stood up and said what everybody else should have said. Miscavige is a lunatic. This is fucking nuts.
They were all thinking it.
And of course, everybody started attacking him. And Mark Yeager did a big number to go like, I'm going to beat this motherfucker up. And, it just turned into a sort of a free-for-all. Anyway, that's my best one.
Oh, I've seen many, but I think, I don't know, there's one time, so we had these cubbies, like Mike was explaining on one of our recent lives, we had these cubbies, and mine was directly across from where Miscavige, see, we had this like 15-foot conference table, one side, Miscavige sat by himself in the center of this 15-foot table, and then everybody else was on the other side. And it was a marketing meeting, so I wasn't sitting in it, but I was in my cubby, which was directly across from where Miscavige sat and faced me all the time. And he would make comments all the time about my hair, whatever, because it would cover my face, so he couldn't see my reaction to see if I was smiling at what he was saying or, or whatever. But anyway, so I'm just trying to like sit there while he's having this meeting and this marketing meeting. And all of a sudden he jumps up onto the conference room table and lunges across at Jeff Hawkins and lands on Jeff Hawkins. They scuffle, knocks, he's beating him and pulling his shirt apart, and buttons are flying and change is flying out of Jeff's pocket, and he's on the ground, and just another day in the office.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was sitting at the table near Jeff.
Yeah, there was a lot of people there.
Kakatogi Road, a man cannot serve two masters, for they will love one and hate the other. Therefore, man can't serve Christ and Miscavige.
Yeah, that's another
good. Absolutely right.
Yep.
Calico 26. Hey, Amy, was wondering how your father is doing.
Well, thank you for asking. He's going through a hard time right now. He's on dialysis 3 times a week and everything, with heart failure, kidney failure and everything. But he's hanging in there, and I talk to him often, and I saw him 3 times in the last several months. So, thank you for asking.
Marilyn Honig, Christianity is such a broad term. I am a survivor of an abusive Christian cult/commune. It's hard to not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I can imagine.
Yes, I understand, Marilyn. And what I'm
in man's hands. People can really.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in man's hands, people get, this control thing, and it's just psychotic. So, abusive people, and then how people Anyway, I had to study a lot about cults to even just understand what I was in for 30 years. Anyway, I'm sorry that that happened, and I'm glad that you're out and realize it's a relationship, not religion.
Right.
Mhm.
And my issue is the hypocrisy of Scientology and Hubbard, not that everything about Christianity is wonderful. The Christians that I have interacted with since leaving Scientology have been pretty wonderful, though.
Yes. It's been my experience too.
Denver Stevo. Mike, Amy, love you both. Thanks,
Thank you.
Denver Stevo. We love you too.
Meantime, his little emoji is a pile of poop.
I know. With
With
a halo and angel wings. It's very appropriate. Denver Stevo. Rhonda's a moderate. I'm actually an independent.
Mhm.
That is my political affiliation. Independent. So I'm
Yeah.
one of those people that pollsters are always looking for. Oh, what do the independents think? Let's see what the independents have to say. Okay, Bella P. Both of you are great examples of how we can all be friends despite our differences. Love SPTV.
Oh, thank you.
I
Yes.
couldn't agree with you
Mhm.
more.
Yeah.
Okay, Maria de Jesus Gutierrez. FYI, Leah joined the Catholic religion when she left SOC and even had her daughter baptized. I was born and raised Catholic, and Jesus is my middle name.
Mm.
I use it so strangers and my atheist buddies can see me coming. That's funny. Rejoined. That's probably the right word.
Right.
I've talked to Leah about this at some length. In fact, that one of the episodes of The Aftermath shows us going into St. Patrick's in
Oh, yeah,
New
that's right,
York,
and lighting candles, right?
lighting candles, and that was a really interesting experience to me, and we talked about it I think on that show, but we've talked about it a lot. The peacefulness and the lack of anybody being pushy about, you got to do this, you got to do that, where's your money, hand it over, you got to buy a book, you got to read this, you got to get on this course. It was just a very peaceful experience, and nobody challenged us about, were we reporters, were we there trying to get a story on what's going on inside St. Patrick's. Were we CIA agents or FBI? Were we really secretly SPs? It was just, and that's what I find enjoyable about the Calvary Baptist people and experience.
Yeah.
It's just nice people who I may not share. Like I've very clearly expressed my views to Willie that I am in violent disagreement with their ideas about gays, like totally. And he respects me for that. It's not like we can't be friends because we disagree.
Of course
And
you can.
and it's not like we can't talk to one another about what our perspective is and try and persuade the other one that they're wrong.
Right.
Like my
view on that is everyone has a life journey, and I'm not the judge. So, do what you're going to do, and hopefully, you learn in the process or whatever.
Yep.
I'm not the judge.
I hear you. We did enough judging already to last more than one lifetime.
And I've been judged so bad. Man, I should show you some of these wonderful pictures caricatures that Scientology made of me. They're just so flattering.
Yeah, exactly.
The church that's just like a Christian church.
I understand. Anthony Spurgeon, in Hymn of Asia, Hubbard says he's Buddha, right? Yes, he does.
Yeah, yeah.
Am I Mattia? I'm the long prophesied red-headed reincarnation of Buddha. Yeah.
And also wrote songs I think wrote songs about that too. Yeah. Same thing.
Okay. Ann Hummingbird. Love to Mike and Amy from Lancaster, California.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. I know. Mark. Hey, Mark Fisher. DM told me he hated Coach Joe Gibbs because he thanked Jesus Christ after winning the Super Bowl. That's what he thinks of Jesus.
Oh, yeah. David Miscavige can't stand that. Like, I remember him coming into one of our Watchdog Committee meetings with his Top Gun sunglasses on in the middle of the evening and leather jacket or whatever, strutting in. And then he told us that somebody who had left, he always keeps tabs on people who left, and he likes to dish on stories about what's going on in their life. And he was just laughing, giggling like a hyena about how somebody became a Christian that left. And, so that kind of puts in your mind, well, I don't know, it's probably bad to become a Christian, after you leave. And I didn't understand it really, but all I knew is that it was absolutely frowned upon.
Right. Yeah. That's
From the top.
That's going to the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, in the mind of a Scientologist, that is going to the dark side.
Yeah.
Like you might as well become a psychiatrist.
Yeah. So that tweet is so disingenuous, and it's just,
I know,
using celebrity to, paint a false picture.
Alex, hey, can we talk about Heba? What do you want to talk about? It's so sad. Heba brings great sadness to me every time I think about him. Heba, for all of Heba's faults and failings, which were pointed out to him and to me as his boss on numerous occasions by Miscavige, Heba is one of the nicest, most gregarious, easy to get along with people that I have ever had the pleasure of knowing in my entire life. And he could be frustrating as hell sometimes, but it saddens me to think that this 80-plus-year-old man is still being abused and still has been unable to see his way clear of the nightmarish existence that he lives, whatever that may be, whether he is in a nursing home now, or whether he is just being guarded full time at the gold property. It's just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
You have anything to add about Heba, Amy?
No, but I'll pray for him, because, like it says, pray for your enemies. Heber's not an enemy, but I pray that David Miscavige, like, it's not a thing of like, I pray for rainbows for David Miscavige. I pray for him to become powerless, to hurt people, and that he's taken out of a position of power, and that people's blinders are taken off, so and they're freed from the delusion of Scientology. So these are the type of things that I pray for. So I pray for his freedom.
I hear you. Eddie Hussein, Mike, how come you haven't converted to Christianity? Well, I wrote about this at the end of my book because people ask me about this a lot, and it's a rather lengthy response. Read it in the book. I'm sort of done with organized religion and people telling me how to think. So that's just
I'm
my
done with
view.
organized religion too. So it's a relationship, with God and who's alive and there. And if you just call on his name and ask him, if you're real, reveal yourself to me, he will. That's all I have to say about it.
Okay. Stephanie Estabrook, appreciate the attention to this topic. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, we're moving through here. Tawny TB, Amy, you're absolutely beautiful, and I'm so grateful that you escaped that insanity.
Yes.
I wish you blessings too numerous to count. Mike, thank you for hosting. Happy Easter to both of you and your families.
What a beautiful
such a nice message.
Yes, thank you. Bless you.
Maxwell Edison's mom. That's my favorite. You know how much of a Beatles fan I am. Thank you both for this video. I appreciate you both. Well, thank you, Maxwell Edison's mom. Maxwell Edison, majoring medicine. Hans Stout, can you discuss how Scientology differs from Christianity with respect to the way that the different religious traditions deal with the experience of shame or contempt? In your estimation, what teachings might account for the differences? Wow.
Shame.
Okay. Shame or contempt, and what teaching? Look, I'm just going to, this could be the topic of, a 200-page essay. I'm just going to say that the idea of shame or contempt, let me split these up. Shame. In Scientology, you are basically shamed constantly. And it is a pattern and practice of Scientology to shame people, from your individual counseling, like Amy was saying, pulling out all the tiny little details of every transgression or thing you don't want to tell someone, and then announcing it to the world so that you are shamed, and shaming you into giving money because you're supposed to give money, and shaming you into, abandoning your family because that's the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics. And contempt is another thing that is very prevalent in Scientology. In fact, the contempt for everyone who is not a Scientologist and therefore is ignorant or evil, because there's only one of two things. If you're not a Scientologist, it's either because you're ignorant, don't know anything about it, or because you do know about it and you're evil.
Or a degraded
being. Yeah.
Because that's a huge classification of people.
Well, there's so many terms in Scientology that are contemptuous terms. These two concepts of shame and contempt are ingrained in the DNA of Scientology.
Yep.
Okay, let's hurry on through. Takima Maya. Amy, so glad you found your way to true faith. So glad you all escaped. My Savior is risen. He is risen indeed. Hubbard can't say that.
Hubbard cannot say that. So
Hubbard didn't even come back from Target 2.
He didn't come back. They made mansions for him and everything like that, and he didn't come back.
Okay. Jane Ann Originals. I was a little scared of this title, even though I know what great people you are. Mike, your kindness is humbling. I am a Christian, but hate that there are some Christian high control cults, really.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we all do.
Yeah.
Marianne McCarrick, is there something you both still miss from Scientology or find difficult to overcome? The only thing I ever missed was the camaraderie and this idea that you're with people doing something that has a greater purpose. But I have found a new greater purpose and now am with people carrying that out. And the friendship and the camaraderie that I have with Amy and Mark and Claire and Leah and Aaron and the gang is
fills that void.
Yeah, it fills that void over and above, way beyond.
Way beyond. It's real friendship. In Scientology, even though we worked together for 500 years, like I couldn't have told you what your mom's name was.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like I couldn't have told you what my husband's mom's name was.
How true that is.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think about Christian-based cults? I think that
any
cult is a cult.
Yeah, and there's exact
delineating
that make up a cult.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's information control and all kinds of different things. And a cult is a cult, period. In my view.
Yep. And Hummingbird. Amy, please tell your dad you met someone on here from your original landing pad. LOL.
And with Air Force Base, I will, and Hummingbird, I will. Thank you.
Cindy Switzer, thank you for this candid and open discussion. You are both so appreciated. Thank you, Cindy. I know we're taking some random ones, not just super chats.
Oh, Kat I did not say blah blah.
Is it truth to blah, blah, blah when Amy says it? Absolutely. When Amy says it, you gotta take a shot.
No, it's a double shot when Amy says it.
Denise Locker, what should we say to members of the Ways and Means Committee that would help stop CSI? Tell them that Scientology is in violation of public policy, is in violation, and the specifics are that they are breaking up families, they are using taxpayer-supported funds to hire private investigators and conduct smear campaigns and attack people. That's the stuff that is probably most important to inform them of. Good question. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we've got a few more here. There's an ideologue in Baton Rouge and the Nation of Islam is involved in it. What's up with that? Exactly. Well, there's no ideal org in Baton Rouge. There is no org in Louisiana, not in Baton Rouge and not in New Orleans. There is a mission, and they've started calling missions, some missions, ideal missions.
Oh, good.
I don't even know what that is. The Nation of Islam is involved in it. Hey, did you see my blog today? There are like it seems like most of the new stuff in the Chicago ideal org are from the Nation of Islam. And the first guy in there is thanking Louis Farrakhan for leading him to truth. And this is a Scientology staff member in an ideal org.
If Scientology can be a Christian and you're hired, oh my gosh.
It's crazy.
He's an anti-Christian.
Okay, Burke, this isn't really intended to be a blanket endorsement or condemnation of any religion other than Scientology. What's more, learning about Scientology helps people to recognize cult control. Thank you. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. That's what Amy and I are doing here.
Yes.
We're not trying to pitch you on anything other than expose the hypocrisy and lies of Scientology.
That's right.
Cougar Tail. Hi, Mike. I'm just curious. Do you think David Miscavige worries his Church of Evil will collapse and he'll be charged and prosecuted? Does he live in fear? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He does a lot based on fear.
Yes. Okay. Love Sherlock. One world. If we could just remember that, and we are all just humans with all our issues, if we all just were ethical and loving, what a wonderful world this would be. Hear, hear. Terry Ray, I love that Amy's religion makes her happy. Mike's lack of it makes him happy. Claire's family makes her happy. Depeche Mode makes Mark happy. Debbie Johnson, your beautiful inside and out, Amy. Happy Easter to both of you.
What a wonderful...
I couldn't agree with you more.
Oh, thank you so much.
Nancy Griffiths Aquatics, with all the technology we have now, how come Scientology never built a spaceship to go to Target 2 or find LRH? Happy Easter, everyone. Yeah, it is really a good question that has been posed a few times by people saying, okay, if Scientologists can recall all of this whole track history, and Hubbard says that, 75 million years ago, they had DC-8s that were intergalactic and could transport people all over the universe, and that there were 76 planets in this organization, and they had all these billions of people and this supercomputers and this and that. How come no Scientologist including Hubbard, has ever recalled any of these technological breakthroughs and brought them to reality in today's world?
I don't know.
How come Hubbard hasn't built a spaceship like the one that he flew on back in, when he was circling Arcturus?
And he would, in his lectures that would always go off the rails, talking about his whole track, race car driving and all this kind of stuff. Why didn't he design it if this is true?
I know.
It's ridiculous.
Okay, Bonnie Dehor. I love this pairing. Keep it up. I believe we all have a purpose and think Mike has found God's purpose for his life, saving folks from the sea of S. God bless you both.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you have not subscribed to my channel or hit the like button, please do so. See you again next time.
Yes.
Anyway, thanks so much, Amy, as always.
Yes.
Bye
My
for
pleasure. Now. Bye-bye. Well, thank you for watching my video. If you like it, please hit the like button, subscribe, comment. What else are you supposed to do? Share it. I go through and I do see your comments. So just know that I am looking and respond when I can. And I care about what you have to say. So if you would like to order my book, my paperback version of my book directly from me, which is signed by myself and my husband, you send $19.95, which includes shipping, to paypal.me/Scobee Publishing. All right, more to come, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.